Recording. Hi, Rachel. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Mirit?
I'm good.
Good.
Okay, so should we start our new podcast?
Let's go for it. Let's go for it.
Okay, so hello, everybody. My name is Mirit Hoffman. I'm a gerontologist and a lawyer, and my main focus is estate planning and elder law. And I deal with wills and preparing enduring power of attorneys and dealing with trusts and advising people that have dual citizenships. And I host a talk discussion show thing called Golden Topics. And I discuss where in Golden Topics, we discuss significant crossroads for seniors. And Rachel, you introduce yourself.
Hi, I am Rachel Weinstein. I am a licensed clinical social worker in Israel. I also have a license in Illinois, Chicago. And I work with a variety of people. I have my own private practice and I meet with people in person. I meet with them on Zoom. Once in a while, I meet with them in their homes. And I work with folks who are experiencing a lot of different things, right? People who are dealing with transitions, mental health issues, depression, anxiety, loneliness. I also work with folks who are either recently made Aliyah or fairly recently at any point made Aliyah, because that transition is very, very difficult. I also work with folks who are LGBTQ plus and their parents, particularly in the Orthodox Jewish world, because it is, and I know from whence I speak, it is a difficult process, but there are definitely ways to, try to understand each other and keep your family intact, which is the most important. And for many, many years, I worked in hospice when I was still in the States and nursing homes. And so I also work with older folks who are going through their life changes and all of that. So that is me in a medium-sized nutshell.
Very good. And we're very excited to open our new podcast series called
Yes.
Caring for an Aging Parent.
Aha, there we go. All
There we
right.
go. And our first session we're going to talk about is called I Want to Go Home, and what that means and how to meet that need. So, Rachel, you take it. Why don't you start with a story or something to get us going?
Gotcha. So when I actually, I'm going to interrupt myself. I do that sometimes. And that is, I want to say that I come to this topic both professionally and personally. My mom, let her rest, was in a nursing home before she had passed away, and that was because I was the only one available to take care of her, and there were about 6,000 miles that separated us because she was in New York and I was in Israel. But when I was working, I remember one particular gentleman in a nursing home. I remember when he'd been in the nursing home for a little bit of time. I don't remember exactly how long rather, but he would yell. He would yell out of his room, take me home, take me home, take me home. And, you'd ask him, what's happening? Sometimes people would write him off as, oh, he's just demented. He just yells that. But ask him, you don't make that assumption. Don't make that assumption about anybody, anywhere. And when you spoke to him, he wasn't quite as demented as people like to pass him off as. And he would say, my family left me here. They don't love me. They just don't love me. I just spoke with his son like an hour ago. That's how he felt. Take me home. They left me here. They just left me here. And it was painful because I knew that the situation that he was in warranted being placed. His family could not take care of him at home. His medical needs were far too great. And it was actually ironically because they loved him that they needed a place for him to be. But they wanted to do what they could, and what they could do did not include taking care of him at home, whether it was funds, whether it was emotional resources, whatever it is, or whatever it was. No matter how much they explained to him, it's absolutely not that we don't love you, it's that we love you so much. But he really believed that they had just dumped him off somewhere. And it was very difficult. It was very difficult for everybody.
And it
It's very,
really
very
sounds
difficult.
very difficult. I mean, there's a lot of stories that I get from my clients where um, for their older parents or who are in a nursing home and they come visit them and the parent is saying, I don't really belong here. There's crazy people here. And this is a person who has very serious dementia and, once in a while has a good day or a good minute. She
Right.
sees everybody as crazy and she feels like she doesn't belong here. And every time I remember that client used to say, I come back home in tears because what do I say to my mom? Mom, you're also like, what do I say? Um,
Right. Right. I
so yeah, it's a
I
really
remember
difficult subject.
I remember my mom once saying, I don't think it was when she was in the nursing home, but it was somewhere else. I can't hang out with these ladies. They're old people. And she would help Ma, how old are they? They're in their like late 70s. Mom. I couldn't at that point, I remember, and she was totally with it to the best of my knowledge. I wasn't gonna tell her, Mom, come on, give me a break. You're that age too. But it was very clear that that line in her mind had been drawn. I remember as a kid, if somebody said they were 30, 40, 50, I remember thinking they were like, oh my God, they're going to die tomorrow. That was old. That was so old, right? And those were the old people and we were the young people. And then you get to that age, and thank God for better health and health care and all that stuff. And you realize, oh my God, that wasn't so old. And now I hope I get older. And the point is that age is very, how you feel about your age is very subjective. Yes, some people say it's just a number. In a lot of ways it is. Um, but I think that whatever value we have attached to age, once we get to that, God willing, we get to that age, uh-oh, we're like that one, this one, the other one. When even though it may or may not be true, we have that connection in our head with that number, and it can be really difficult. So my mom was 75 or 6 when she said this, give or take. And those 70-year-old, those almost 80-year-olds, they were the old people. I'm young, I think young. Um, and in part she did, but she couldn't let herself be old. She couldn't, quote unquote, old. She couldn't let herself. And that may have also saved her sanity a little bit too. But
Yeah,
it was
absolutely. I think
interesting to look at and watch and go,
exactly,
they're
exactly.
your age and they're old, but you're not. Okie dokie.
Look, if
Let's go
she
with
feels like
that.
I think we all have an issue with accepting a lot of who we are, also from an
Hmm.
age wise, also from things that, are harder for us to do now than they were easier, like
Hmm.
silly things like running. I mean, I could run like, I don't know, 5 kilometers without doing anything. It was like an easy thing, and that's not a lot. And now like I can hardly do it. So you don't accept your limitations. It's very difficult for people to
Right,
accept their limitations. It's part of it, I think.
right,
Um,
right.
I was
I
remembering, wait, before we carry on, there was another thing that I wanted to bring up with the I want to go home.
Mhm.
Actually, that this was during a couple of months ago. I remember going to visit somebody. She had an aide, and she was
Mhm.
screaming at her aide, "I want to go home. I want to go home. I want to go home." And she was at home, literally at her house.
Right,
And
right,
and I was saying to this aide, like, what do you do? What does she want? And she was saying she actually wants to go home to her mom. She wants to die. She wants to go home to her mom. That's what she keeps telling. It's just that she doesn't tell you that because she doesn't want to upset everybody, but that's what she means. And that's also something
right.
that we have to sort of face and say, okay, how do you deal with that? What do you say?
And there is, I've read articles and beyond articles. When I worked in hospice, I watched it. And they say that the reason there isn't a whole lot of research on this particular topic is because it's usually people who see, let's keep it to this population, elderly people. There's no good way to do, statistical analysis on what it means when somebody says, I want to go home. But I would take a wild guess that most hospice workers, who are most nursing home workers or even hospital workers, doctors, nurses, aides, social workers, chaplains, music therapists, the whole kit and caboodle, there is we've all seen someone do some variation of I want to go home. I've seen people reaching out their hands, which is, stuff I remember hearing about in movies. And when I first saw it, I was like, oh my, that's really happening. I remember, and this was, I wasn't always able to speak about this without falling apart. But when my mom, she passed away about 3-ish months after this, she was in the hospital bed. She was in the hospital actually, and she started to talk and she was looking out and she said, I miss him. I, There's no one else in the room but me, and I'm very much your daughter. I said, who do you miss? Like, what are you, like your dad? Who'd you, and my dad passed away 16 years before. And she said, I miss daddy. And at the time I almost fell apart, but she she was getting to that place. She was starting, it was a version of the early stages of I want to go home. And sometimes people say I want to go home because home is unfortunately not for everybody, but home is where there's safety, where there's comfort, where there's familiarity. I know these people, I know these faces. That cushion on that couch, that's where mom likes to sit, and I like to sit near her. It transcends time and it transcends age. And I want to go home. It's not always I want to go to that building. Sometimes it is absolutely just that, but it's I want to go where it's safe. It kind of reminds me of, I'm so going to date myself here, but the theme song from Cheers, I
Yeah,
want to go where everybody knows your name, right? I'm sure some people listening will be like, what? And other people go, I remember that show. But it's you want to be where quite literally people know your name, where you can walk in to a room or to a place and people go, oh yeah, how's it going? Instead of, oh gosh, nobody knows me. That's what home represents. For my mom, I miss him. I want to be with daddy because he had predeceased her years and years earlier. But that was her comfort. She wanted to be comfortable. And I remember she had just had a wound changed, and she was not comfortable, to say the very least. She wanted to be where there was comfort, where there wasn't as much pain. Um, it's a very real phenomenon of people wanting to go home, the
it's
the the
so
big the
true.
big home,
It's so
right?
true because, even with, as a lawyer, when I deal with all sorts of documentation for people, what instructions and how they would like things to happen to them, or what kind of instructions they would like to give their power of attorneys when they're no longer capable of taking care of themselves. There's a lot of it saying, I want to stay at home. I want my plants. I want pictures of the children. I want that
Right.
specific cushion. Make sure that nobody takes that cushion from me. That's the only
Mhm.
one that the pillows
Right,
that I can sleep with. Make sure
right,
it's
right.
super important. And that's really part of home, this comfort zone, the smells that you're used to. Every house has its own thing, that
Mhm.
yellow battered blanket that you have on your couch, which is
Right,
forever, but it's yours and it has that comfy feel.
right. Don't touch it. Don't touch it. Right,
Exactly,
right,
exactly. And that's
right,
home.
right, right. For some people, it's, t-shirts that should probably go to, that the big t-shirt heaven in the sky, they become pajamas, right? Why do they become pajamas? Um, because they represent something, they mean something. There's a certain comfort, and it's not only the physical comfort, it's just being in that shirt makes you feel good, nice, warm, safe, whatever the word is. um you know how it fits. You don't have to worry if it shrunk, because it's never going to shrink again. The material has shrunk and expanded as many times as it could possibly. It's reliable, it's dependable, and it's yours. It is yours. When you see a little kid with their stuffed animal, the stuffed bear, you can't just give a kid who has a connection with their stuffed animal, just give them a different stuffed animal. I mean, if you would like to see a full-on temper tantrum, sure. But the stuffed animal with the rip that, mom has been saying for so long, I'm going to sew it up, that's their bear. Do not touch their bear, because it's home, it's comfort. Um,
Absolutely. So what do you say, like, to people who are listening to us? and have these situations? What can we do to help them or to make it, better or solve it somehow?
So I think sometimes if somebody is in a facility, whatever kind of facility it is, I think if somebody is if your mom, your dad, your aunt, whoever it is saying, I want to go home, I want to go home, first hear them. Listen to what they're saying. Sometimes people are so it's so hard to make the decision to place someone. Even though I lived, in Israel and my mom was in Brooklyn, it wasn't like a light decision to make. But sometimes people have to work on themselves so much. Okay, I'm really going to do this. I can't believe I'm signing these papers. That mom, if you say you want to go home, I'm going to have to double down because I can't handle it. Well, it is about everyone, but it's really about mom or dad or aunt or whoever. So why do you want to go home? And that's not a dumb question. Why do you want to go home? Listen to what they say. They may have an answer that is very different. Now, look, it could be that they want to go home sometimes because it's just not a great place. Whatever the place is, I don't like it here. Take me home. It could be that they miss their family. I lived with, whoever else was in the house. I remember my neighbor upstairs could always help me when I needed milk. They miss the people. They miss, familiar faces. It could be that they're truly homesick. I miss my house. If you're on vacation, halavai, if you're on vacation for long enough, sometimes, I know, I've heard my husband say, I kind of miss my bed. This is really pretty, but I miss my own bed. Sometimes you miss your own bed. Sometimes you're bored. They may be bored. I have nothing to do. And it doesn't mean that they were super active in the past. It means that the stuff they did, staring at their wall, knitting their whatever it is, they're bored. It's not the same activities. Um, and sometimes they want to go back to their family. When it comes to, I'm just going to tie this into other things too. When it comes to activities, social activities, when it comes to medication, when it comes to eating, when it comes to bathing, I don't know about you, but I don't do any of those things on a very tight schedule, right? I can drink my coffee whenever I want, which I do, right? I can take a shower at night. I can take it in the morning. I could take it at 4 a.m. When you're in a facility, there are rules. There is structure. And it's not necessarily you can't, but Mrs. Whoever, Mrs. Goldberg, you need to take your medication when the nurse is giving out the medication. But I like to take that pill with lunch. But we don't, maybe there isn't if there's a specific need for her to take it at lunch, that's fine. But she doesn't really get to call those shots as much. I want to have a cup of coffee in the middle of the day. Oh, there's no coffee around. Some places are better than others, have more amenities than others, but your life is on a schedule, lights out, or when staff changes, when there are staff changes, when, the 3 o'clock shift or whatever the shift is comes in or out, there are more rules and rules that you didn't ever have before. You don't have access to your own life in the same way. So sometimes it's also a matter of um recognizing that. Other things to think about, when someone says, why, I want to go home. Um, Whether they have the mental capacity to fully understand where they are or not, they'll know often something's different. These faces are different. My daughter, when she comes into my room, never calls me Mrs. Goldberg. She calls me mom. This lady keeps saying, hello, Mrs. Goldberg. How are you? Right? Like, people don't address you the same way. The environment is different. Um, there are social aspects that are different. I like to go with, hang out with the ladies and have a glass of tea and play poker. Let's have a poker playing, granny who likes to have her glass of tea. Maybe the ladies in this facility don't even know what the heck poker is. Um, it's Everything is different. And like that gentleman that I mentioned in the beginning, sometimes people don't feel loved. You cut me off from everything. You cut me off from the cable shows I like. You cut me off from my internet. I don't know where to put my private stuff. Right at home, I can take off my jewelry and put it on the nightstand. Please don't do that in a nursing home. I don't care how amazing it is. Don't do that. The other thing that I realized too earlier is sometimes we pull people away from their habits, not only their great habits. I like to exercise in the morning, or I like to read my, if you've got a relative, and this can be very, very painful. I mean, all of it can be really painful, but someone who eats excessively, they're not going to have access to that nearly as much food as they did. Someone who maybe is an alcoholic, they're not going to be they shouldn't be drinking in a facility, but there is no there is a rare time when you can have a shot of something. I worked in a facility where one of our residents was 104, I think, and he was sharp as a tack. And he had in nursing homes, everything has to be a prescription. And there was a doctor ordered prescription for Max to have a shot of whatever his drink was every day at 4. And when we asked the doctor, like, are you for real? He didn't take a whole lot of medication too. And he said, I remember him saying, if that man has lived to 100 and whatever it was, the shot is not going to take him out. Let him have that's quality of life. Let him have the shot. It was what, and with all the medication, the nurses had a bottle of, I don't know, it was gin or whatever it was. It was hysterical, but that was the routine. But if somebody's engaging in unhealthy habits like drinking, smoking, there could be drugs, whatever it is that they can't keep doing in the way they were, that can also be very destabilizing. And hopefully, again, I know this touches on other medical issues, but again, I want to go home so I can drink. Ma, you can't. This was not my mom's particular issue, but you can't go home and drink. But I want to drink. I'm dying anyway. I can't bring liquor in. You can't go home. Whatever it is, these are issues that people are also dealing with. And just the last 3 things, actually. One is having to share living space.
Right.
If you've been living at home, I don't want to, when I was in the hospital a few months ago, I remember I had to share the bathroom with total strangers. Now, bathroom's just a bathroom, and we weren't there forever, thank God. We were there temporarily. But I do remember thinking, like, I hope nobody knocks, and I hope I don't get visited by the nurse. Like, it was weird, and I believe I'm totally with it. It was weird to be in, wasn't my bathroom. You have to share stuff. If the TV's on too loud, do you have to lower it? Do you have headphones? Oh my God, it's just things you didn't think about. Another thing is, it's possible that if you're going to a facility, you've already downsized. I already got rid of my stuff. Now I gotta get it. Now I have to get rid of the stuff, the room, the place where the stuff is held. Stop downsizing me. A whole life. It's really hard to shrink it down to like one bed, one nightstand, and a call button. That's not the life that's not what I signed on for.
Right.
And the last thing is, this is where sick people live. Because if I'm here and they're here, I think that means I'm also sick, whatever the sickness is, which means I can look at them and go, wow, she's gonna die soon, or wow, she is loopy, or whatever the word is. And I'm not saying these are the right things to say. I don't want anyone to
Right,
think I am,
right. Everybody
but
feels.
like I may or may not have heard my mom say a couple of these things, right? God love her. But if they're here and I'm here, that means something's wrong. And that means I'm about to look squarely into the eyes of my own mortality. And I don't want to do that. I just want to watch my television shows. Stop. That's all very, very scary stuff, very difficult stuff to deal with.
It is very difficult stuff. I'm thinking though, there are also the cases of people who want to go home and they live in a facility which they actually have their own room and they don't have to share space, but it's different.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering maybe for those people, but even actually for everybody, I'm wondering if you hear what they want, why they want to go home. If it's like, they don't love me anymore. Maybe if you visit them a lot more, then they'll actually feel okay
Right.
with it. Or if you have a Zoom calls with them, because visiting maybe is difficult, then it'll be okay for them.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you make sure that you have lots of pictures of all the kids and grandchildren on their walls,
Right.
that might make
Right.
it more homey. And the same thing with like, if you hear them and see what it is that they miss, maybe you can bring those stuff to them. It could be that pillow, it could be that blanket, it could be that quilt, it
Right.
could be that whatever it is that that silly ornament that nobody understood what it was, but for that person, it means a lot. And just putting it there and putting some stuff which is familiar for them, which makes it home, maybe will calm them down a little bit.
I think that's very, very key. When my mother-in-law last year, when she was in the hospital, I know my sister-in-law brought a blanket that, that fit the bed. It wasn't even necessarily her favorite. It was like, let's give mom this blanket. And what was important to her was that it was something homey. It didn't have the name of the facility stamped on it in 100 different ways. It wasn't the pale blue, this comes from a hospital blanket. It was a real blanket, so to speak. Pictures, little tchotchkes that she had in the house, they brought and put around, put on the walls. We absolutely did. We did Zoom calls. Um, and whatever you can do to add some level of, again, comfort and hominess and feeling like, okay, this is not where I really want to be, but you know what? These are familiar things. Those are my anchors, right? I see that picture. That's mine. That's familiar. That's my life. That's the connection. Notes, never underestimate the power of little kid notes that are, totally misspelled, whatever language they're in. Literally, this is me and this is granny, or me and grandpa, or me, whatever it is. Um, that's that's great. And it's real and it's genuine. It's not, I'm not gonna knock gift shop stuff either, but it's really homemade. Um, Food. People, we all connect with food. If I said birthday, you'd say
Birthday cake?
cake. I am at right, cake, right. No, I'll help you with that one. Right. Movies, popcorn. Like there's food. And
Yeah,
also, like Jewish holidays,
right.
whatever. Everyone's got a connection. So long as someone's diet, if they're not, on whatever the special diet is that won't let them have it, if you can bring some matzo ball soup, oh my God, please bring matzo ball soup. No one says you have to be a chef. No one says you have to cook every day, but a little bit is, my mom taught me the word, it's the tom, it's the taste of home. Even if it doesn't taste that good, it's home, because my guess is you probably weren't that good at cook before too. And the point is that it's home, it's familiar, and I know I keep saying these words, but we all crave that. We all need to feel safe. In Maslow's hierarchy, one of the first things that we need non-negotiably is safety, and we need shelter. We need to know that's our base. Chocolate chip cookies are delightful, but if you don't feel safe, yeah, you can't hang a cookie over your head and say, I have a house. That's not it. We all want safe. We all want to know that we have the people that we call home, the place we call home, and it's hard to let that go. But if people can visit, music is also huge for so many people. I know that in one of the women I worked with, who is a music therapist, we were visiting a nursing home, and different people of different eras like different types of music. So she got really used to playing.
Awesome.
She would walk around everywhere. She was like a troubadour, and she'd walk around with her guitar, but not everyone wanted the guitar. And she'd have different music on her phone, and some people really liked big band, and other people like, this, that, the other thing. Some people liked religious music. There was a gentleman who liked heavy metal. Was not quite in her repertoire at that time, but it was after that, because no, I mean, heavy metal kind of demands it be a little bit louder. You can't listen to, I mean, it's not as appreciated
Right, right, right.
but he really, whatever the bands were, he really enjoyed that. That gave him it gave him, he felt like, huh, now this is the music. Don't give me la la and sing-alongs. I want a guitar and a bunch of words I can't understand. Give me my heavy metal, for crying out loud. That's what he wanted. Um, and I think this is probably a lesson in probably every aspect of our lives. Don't assume. Mom always liked, Mom, do you want me to bring this? Ask, what would you like me to bring? Dad, Do you want the, the smell of your old cigar? What, I can't bring the cigar, but, or maybe I can, I can't light it, but don't assume that's what they want because it was always comfortable for them. Because bringing what they used to do can also make it harder because then they can't interact with it the same way. Ask, ask, just ask.
I think
When
it's
you go to a
really,
restaurant,
yeah,
you don't want somebody to order for you for the most part. I know what I like and what I don't like. Let me have ownership and agency. Don't take it away because I'm a certain age or I'm laying down or I can do this or I can't do this. Ask me what I want. Treat me like a person. That's really important too.
I think it's really important. I want to just wrap it up. Um, and just say also, um, asking is also validating, meaning you're not just pushing it off where he says, I want to go home, I want to go, and you're like, okay, whatever, he's crazy or she's crazy, I'm not even going to bother addressing it.
Right,
Addressing something also can calm somebody down because it makes him stop or her stop, hopefully shouting it, and actually getting
right,
to talk to you, which is a dialogue, which sometimes that's all they want, just to have a
right,
dialogue and to be validated with their feelings, even
right.
if they know that you won't be able to fix it. But the fact that you actually sat down to listen, to hear what they have to say,
That's
sometimes
meaningful.
it's good.
Right. And I'll add to, if we're talking about someone who, when you said, if you ask, what do you need? What do you want? And they'll stop. There are times where a person will just keep saying it. And it's possible that at that point, they may need a different or an additional intervention. It may
True.
mean
True.
that's a level of anxiety that's real. They're feeling it. It's painful. So it's not just, I don't really love that word so much, but it's not just, oh, they miss home. What can you do? No, no, no. You can't, they can't live at home anymore. And you can't put the physical home into the facility or the private room or the shared room or whatever it is. But if it's at a point where the anxiety of wanting to be home, of repeating the same thing, of shouting the same thing, of being so angry, whether it was their norm or not before, that's more than, oh, they really miss home. That's agitation. That can be anxiety. And that's really painful. I mean, I don't particularly enjoy being, nervous about something. I don't think most people do. But when you're in that place and you can't make sense of it, why is no one hearing me? It may mean that you need to get some medical intervention. I'm
Right.
not saying drug them up. I am not saying that. But again, think about being so anxious that you can't undo, you can't rewind that feeling. You're just in that state of for that long. Person may need some, whatever the medication may be, to help them relax, because if they're that agitated and that anxious for extended periods of time, it's not fair. Don't, even if you, whether you love them or not, don't make anyone be in that state. And also it affects the rest of their body. So you really need to listen. You really need to go into the room and say, what's going on? Are you allowed to be annoyed because they've said they want to go home 100 times? Yes, you're allowed to be annoyed. Everyone's allowed to be annoyed. Are you allowed to be sad? Oh my God, this was so hard. Stop telling me you want to go. Yes, you're allowed to do that. Are you allowed to take it out on them? No. Make sure you check yourself, get support where you need it. But it's really important to ask, what do you need, Mom? What do you need, Dad? What do you need? Whatever you call your parents. Um, and last thing, make sure that if it's more than, I just miss my house, if it's even more than that, involve the facility, get the staff, pull the staff in, let them know what is it that you can do, with my mother-in-law, just again, last thing, when she was in the hospital, nursing home, I don't remember anymore. Um, sometimes they'd have people walk, go to different rooms, and you'd have religious folk that would come in just to visit. So we let them know, that Father whoever, don't visit. I mean, if you want to say hello, that's okay, but don't do anything else. If Rabbi whoever wants to come in, now we're talking. But please don't have Father whoever come in, because that would not be okay. You need to connect all the pieces. So
It's true. It's very true. Well, this was a very good talk.
woohoo! What a
Everybody
lovely
else
start.
feels the same as us.
Okay. Sure hope so.
Um,
So
if you have any questions, you can obviously contact either one of us. Rachel, do you want to state your number?
sure. My phone number is 052-874-5589, and I am WhatsAppable. And it also works as a phone. There you go. That's a
There
phone
you
number
go.
too.
So if there are any questions and any concerns, please let us know. And in the meantime, share this talk with anybody you feel would benefit from it. And we're
Mhm.
looking forward for you to join us in our next talk on our next episode of Caring for an Aging Parent. See you soon.
Woohoo. Awesome. Looking forward.
Bye.
Bye.